There's nothing like good old red flares to help bring up all the anxiety you were helping push down back to the forefront of your brain. Jesus. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood. I already did it. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 4 of season 2 of Last of Us is here. It is called Day One, which is kind of a play on how the calendar worked in the game. I'm glad that they went back to that. But this is sort of the first day of the revenge tour of Ellie and Dina. And before we get to that, we sort of see a prologue of what would be. I don't want to go into too spoileries because not everybody knows this, but Abby's an antagonist of this via Ellie, Isaac Dixon, is another, and it's played wonderfully and terrifyingly by Jeffrey Wright, who played Isaac also in the game. We see a prologue that we didn't get any of this in the game. We sort of hear that he was once a Fedra member that defected, but now we actually get to see sort of that trigger point or when that actually happens. So we're seeing an army tank of Fedra soldiers making their way through Seattle. They come upon a stopping point where they meet some folks who are with WLF, or like what they think is their meeting grounds for the first couple of people of WLF, and they're planning. The people in the truck are seemingly ready to go to fight in war. When Isaac says, "Like, no, let me go out and talk to them first, because this is all part of his plan. He's already sort of deducted what he's planning to do." In this, there are some soldiers making cracking wise, having jokes, having a good time, and there's one officer, young, naive, clearly you can tell impressionable officer who just asks, like, "Well, why do we call them that?" And the joke sort of leads to the fact that these folks are called voters. And my man's like, "That's just what we do. It is what we do." And Isaac chimes in. He's like, "No, let's show a little bit more respect. We call them voters because we, once these folks started taking over Seattle, we removed the right for them to be voters. And so it's sort of a dignity removing term that we've given people." And he apologizes to Isaac, who's the ranking officer in this moment. So as the ranking officer, he gets off the tank. He's like, "No, let me go talk to them, have a face to face." He asks the officer that sort of asked that naive question to come with him, sort of because he saw sparks. He saw something in him. And he's like, "Okay, I'm going to have you come out." I'm going to get to that later on in the episode. But it hasn't come off. And then we see him defect. It's the moment of truth where he shakes the hand, meets them, and then he throws a grenade into the tank, killing all of them. One of them actually gets out of the truck, and then he opens fire and shoots them. And then so the gullible young officer is kind of like, what is happening? He has sort of his gun trained on Isaac. And Isaac tells him at that moment, "Now's the time of your choice. Choose wisely. But now's the time for you to choose." And then we go to black and we sort of don't see Isaac again until a little bit later in the episode. And so we've heard about the defection in the game. If you're a gamer, you know that you've heard about the defection. This is the first time that you sort of see it. And it puts Isaac on the board as a second antagonist to Abby. Who he's an antagonist to, I won't really go into details until we get to that point of the show. We then pick back up with Ellie and Dina, who are on the same path as to where that tank was. So we see them years after that moment with Isaac. The WLF is fully formed up. He is now the sort of the leader of the WLF. At that point in time, he was sort of defecting to, but he has subsequently become the leader of. We meet Ellie and Dina taking that same path, and so they happen upon the tank that was there and see the officer that's on the ground. They got out, they got shot, just bones at this point. And then Ellie opens up the tank and sees what's happening inside. They're looking for weapons, sort of trying to scrounge together weapons while they make their trek. Ellie finds a watchtower far away that has the WLF logo on it, and she's like, "Well, clearly they're there. We need to go. We need to go there now." And Tina's like, "Well, hold on. Just wait a minute. One, it's broad daylight. They have the higher ground, so they can see us coming from a mile away. We're going to be on horseback. I think, slow down. We should go there, but let's try to go there at night, perhaps on foot, because I don't think going there by horseback is going to do us any favors." And Ellie's like, "Okay, yeah, you're probably right." So they take up shelter at a music shop find a music shop. They go in there. Now, mind you, Seattle's pretty much barren. Like this whole street area is pretty much barren of infected. They're able to sort of walk around. It seems like the WLF has done a good enough job of covering the streets of Seattle that there's not many infected, or if any infected. So it's clear they're able to kind of walk around and go around as they please. So they take shelter in the music shop, and we sort of see a scene where Ellie happens upon a guitar, and it just invokes. You can see it in the clicks. It invokes to her memories. She tunes up the guitar a little bit, and then she begins to play. And she plays "Take on Me." Pretty harrowing number. She goes through it all. She sounds good. Dina getting super emotional about it. For one, because it is emotional, but two, we find out a little bit later why she's probably a little bit extra emotional in this moment. But it hits her. It hits her because she knows that Joel taught her how to play the guitar. She so much brings it up and says he was a good teacher, and Ellie has that moment. She's like, no, he was a good teacher. So we sort of see the memory come back to her, and that shot of the guitar is going to come back. Remember that shot. Sear that in your brain. It's seared in the brain of all gamers, but you're going to remember that shot and that piece and that moment on the guitar, because it sort of comes full circle as we make our way through the show. Dina then says, "Okay, cool. I'm hungry. Do you want me to go make lunch?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so then it parallels to the lunch that's being made by Isaac. This is a gruesome episode, and this is sort of where the gruesomeness starts. There are a lot of just violent pieces to this episode, and you forget, because of how the first three episodes have gone, you kind of forget how in your face and how gruesome this world has sort of become. Isaac may be one of the worst of them all. But in the last episodes, we were introduced to the Scars, the Seraphites, who we learn here are direct opposites of the WLF. They're the ones that are at extreme odds with each other. We see Isaac tuning up and heating up a pan so that he can torture a Seraphite, a Scar. That's what he calls him, a Scar that he has chained up completely naked. In its full glory, we see it all. Has him chained to a wall, and he's torturing him. And we get a lot of good Jeffrey Wright dialogue in this moment. Isaac is great. He's pontificating about the time before the apocalypse, when he used to want this cutlery set, this cooking set, and he was able to sort of get it. He couldn't have got it at Williams Sonoma beforehand, and he even says, like, you don't know what Williams Sonoma is because you're too young to have known that, and it happened before. You would have been able to know what it is. But it was a place where I used to go to get, dishes and cookware. But I couldn't happen upon this until after the apocalypse. And it's just funny what the apocalypse has sort of provided me and allowed me to do. He's like, and by the way, I'm going to use this cookware to torture the hell out of you. And he does. He burns his hand. He burns the Scar's hand. They have a back and forth of who is responsible for the war that has sort of started between the Seraphites and the WLF. And it's like, you did this. And I was like, I don't care about the chicken and the egg. I don't care who did this first. We're now in this impasse. And we want to know where you're planning to attack next so that we can sort of be ahead of it. So Isaac is trying to use this torture to get some information out to figure out where they're going to attack next. There are two guards. Well, we find out that there are two guards, but there's one guard who's like, this seems like this is a lot. And the other guard we don't see on camera is like, shh, let him do what he's doing. It's a Seraphite. We don't care about them. The Scar says that you guys are going to lose. And Isaac's like, really? Tell me how. Because we have superior hospitals. We have superior weapons. We're using military-grade weapons. We are better in every sense of the word, while you guys are using bows and arrows and outdated assault rifles. You're not going to beat us. And the Scar goes on to say, well, the difference between you and I is that every day there is at least one wolf member who defects to us, who joins us, who takes the markings and the scratches of us. And there is never one of us that defects and comes to be a wolf. And I don't know what it is, but there's something in that I set sort of Isaac off. He has been downgrading and playing away and poo-pooing the prophet of the Seraphites this whole time. It's like, yeah, you guys speak to this big heretic who was never, where is she now, to come save you? And the second he realized that he has had people going to them and not listening to him, he decides to go ahead and kill that Scar. That is then when we see the second guard who is standing post outside of that. And we find out that it's the guard that got off the tank with him. Kind of grown up, but now, as much as the Seraphites are zealots of whoever their prophet is, this man is now a full-on believer in whatever it is that the prophet Isaac has to say to him. So he's sort of been the naive little man who asked questions before is now sort of just following because Isaac gave him all the answers that led him down the path that he is now. So um, it's a small thing. We won't get to. It's not an officer that we really need to know or see, but we can see the effect that Isaac and his training has had on this super nice, sweet, naive kid that got out of that tank and sort of just made a choice. And now this is him on the opposite side. This is where this episode gets even grimier. Gina and Ellie go to the watchtower, and they find a way in. They get in there and they find a WLF body who is ridden with arrows. So that's the weapon of choice of the Seraphites. They then go into a room where they see about 5, maybe 6 WLF members hanging from the ceiling with their intestines cut out and blood just dripping everywhere. Ellie follows the blood around and sees that there is a word on the wall that says "Feel her love," which is sort of saying that these Seraphites are saying you need to give yourselves to the prophet that they all hail to. It's at that point that Ellie and Dina put together, like, oh crap, those folks that we saw in the woods are the ones that are responsible for this. So these guys have been going tit for tat. They're both animals to the point where Dina says the great line, like, what the hell is going on in Seattle? Like, what? Um, and so while there aren't many infected that we're seeing, we're just seeing that this battle, these two groups, these two very different groups, but seem to still have the same idea, like follow me and do whatever it is that I say. While there, Dina and Ellie grab a radio and they hear on the radio that there are WLF members coming upon the watchtower as backup. So it's at that point that they grab the walkie, they keep it. That's an important piece. They grab the walkie, they keep it, and then they are on the run. They're on a hide from the WLF members that show up. The WLF members that show up have orders from Isaac to say, hey, bring any scars back so that we can interrogate them. But the leader that's there presently is like, screw what Isaac's saying. I don't care. They've got our friends hanging up with their entrails out. Murder anybody that we see. I don't care if they're children. I don't care. Kill them all. And so this tit for tat continues to go on between the two of them, which means that Dina and Ellie have nothing to show that they're not a part of the scars. So they are going to come off as enemies here. So they go into hiding. They go into hiding and then they eventually get the drop on 2 of the WLF members. Dina shoots one, Ellie stabs another, and then they have to make their way out of a broken window. They get shot out and make their way out and into a transit tunnel. But they can only fit through. They're tinier. They're tiny girls. They're skinnier, tinier girls. So they're able to kind of get through this tunnel because it has some debris and some fungus that's sort of intertwined together. So only they can get through. The bigger soldiers can't walk through there. And so they send word, hey, they're going around to the transit tunnel. Send somebody on the other side. So they get through, and then they get down to the transit tunnels to the subway system. There's a big subway. It looks abandoned, and they start hearing. Well, first, my anxiety rises because we start seeing the red flares. So the WLF members get down there, and they start throwing red flares all over the place. As soon as I saw that, terror came back through my body. For my gamers, you guys understand exactly what I'm talking about. That red subway sequence was insanity. So we get here, and we know that in addition to the WLF, what's happening next is the infected. And so Dina can sort of count clickers by the sounds that they make. So she hears that there's about 5 clickers down there, as well as a ton of infected. So we learn and see that all the sort of good work that the WLF has kept the infected off the streets, they have sort of pushed them down underground, and now they're all in this hotbed that sort of exists underneath. And all hell breaks loose. Chaos occurs. And WLF starts fighting off the infected. And so that keeps them occupied, but that means that Dina and Ellie have to make their way through. And so they're trying to figure out what to do next. They actually go inside an abandoned subway train and start going through the train and going on through the point where, and then these infected start coming into the train. It's a mess. It's intense, and you feel every piece of it. They eventually get to a point where they climb out of the train and then they make it to a gate where they climb over and a turnstile where the infected are right on their tail. They're making through the turnstile. Ellie gets through the turnstile first, and then Dina gets in, but she sort of gets stuck in her process. And then these infected are right on them. And one of the infected is about to bite Dina, and Ellie puts her arm in front of her, and she takes the bite for her. And then they make themselves through the rest of the tunnel. And the infected can't get through the turnstile. They just don't have the brain mechanics to make that work anymore. And so the two of them are able to get out of there and get free. WLF is still stuck back there, probably dead now. And they make their way through. This whole time, as they're trying to figure out where they're going to take solace and rest up for the day or the night, Dina keeps looking at Ellie a type of way like, bitch, I'm about to shoot you because you got bit. What is happening right now? She's just looking at her and looking at her. Ellie and them make it to a theater. It's going to be a pretty important locale for this show going forward. But they make it back to a theater. Ellie's kind of like, cool, we're good. Let's lock it up. So they barricade the door. They put a chair in front of it. And when she turns around, Dina has her gun trained on Ellie. And Ellie's like, what the hell are you doing? And Dina was like, no, I saw you get bit. And Ellie sort of realized like, oh, crap. I have to explain to you. This may sound wild, especially right now. Like somebody saying this after they've been bitten just sounds insane. And Ellie's like, no, I can't be infected. I'm immune to this. And he was like, okay, sure. She's not buying it. She's freaking out. And we learn why a little bit later. But Ellie comes up with the ideas like, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go sit in this couch that's several feet away from you. I'm gonna sit in this couch and you can keep your gun trained on me while I fall asleep. I guarantee you that when I wake up, I will still be me. And so that's what we do. We see a little blackout sequence, and then we see her waking up with water dripping on her face. And Dina eventually sees that her arm is already kind of healing and that the bite isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And she um, lets Ellie know immediately that she's pregnant. And then she jumps on her and they start giving in to their carnal desires and making love right then and there. When they wake up the next morning, understandably, Ellie is like, well, hold on. You just told me you're pregnant and then started making out with me? Like, why now? Like, why is now the time that you decide to give in to whatever it is you were feeling and make this a thing? And it makes sense. Dina kind of was just like, I thought you were gone. Like, I thought I couldn't have the life that I had sort of envisioned for myself in my brain. I had a life of you and I going riding off into the sunset with our little baby. I don't know if that's what you want, but I thought that's what we could have. And I thought for a moment it was gone. So the second that I knew you were back around, I jumped at it. It was like, well, then I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to make this happen, and I'm not losing this. It's at that point that Dina was like, well, and I also knew that you wanted me. And Ellie's like, how? Like, I did a pretty good job of hiding the fact that I wanted anything with you. And Dina's like, you did a terrible job. Like, I knew for a very long time. Dina also goes into the fact that, like, I told my mom when I was young that I like boys and girls. And my mom's like, no, you like boys. And so it got sort of ingrained in my body that I had to choose one. And so I tried to make it work with Jesse. I tried over and over again, multiple times. Even when it failed, he's a great guy, but he's not the guy for me. And even when I knew that he wasn't, I still kept trying because the world told me that's what I should go for. But now, after having a possibility of losing you, all that's thrown out the window. You're who I want. You're my person. We're gonna make this happen. And Ellie's kind of like, well, cool. That's what I want. How do you know you're pregnant? Like, there's nothing out here that can sort of tell you that. And Tina was like, well, when I saw the Seraphites being killed, I threw up, which was a little thing because I've seen some crazy shit. Like, I've seen some stuff before, so I shouldn't have just started vomiting, which made me think that I maybe should take something or figure out what's going on. So we were at the pharmacy, found some pregnancy tests, and I took multiple of them just to be sure. And so they have a moment where they're kind of like, we're gonna be a family. And I was like, I'm gonna be a dad. I guess Jesse's gonna be a part of this too. So he kind of thinks of like, we're gonna be the family of all three of us together. And and Dana's like, yeah, I mean, I guess we are. But before they can kind of like think more upon it, the radio reads, the radio that they took back from the watchtower pings out. And now they have a full line of communication to sort of whatever the WLF is doing. They have their own read, which helps them sort of pinpointing where people are. Where they hear on their radio is that Nora is kind of clocking in saying, hey, I'm here at Lake Hill, which immediately is like, oh, this might do us some good. Let's go to Lake Hill. But from the map, they can't quite see where Lake Hill is, where they're at. They don't know their bearings. So they go up to the roof of the theater, which sort of acts as a new map so they can get an overview of everything. And they see where the explosion is happening and they see that they're moving to Lake Hill. And that's when they're like, Lake Hill's that white building over there. We should go there. And Ellie has this look of like, all right, I know what I need to do next. But she's also sort of conflicted because now she has a family sort of started. And so this is that moment of truth for Ellie as a person where she could just let this go. She could. At this moment, she could choose to be like, you know what? I came this far, but now that I know that this is happening, I'm not going to do this. Instead, she doubles down. Now, she does at least give Dina the opportunity to say, hey, you don't need to be a part of this. And Dina's like, what are you talking about? And Ellie's like, things are different now. They're not the same that they were a couple of minutes ago. You should probably stay back. And Dina's having no parts of that. Dina's like, we go together. If you go, I'm going. We're going together. Now, again, if Ellie was thinking in this moment, she would say, if she's coming with me, if she's not leaving me, then I need to call this all off. And this is where I need to go right off into the sunset with her and just let this go. But she got a lot of that Joel in her. She's like, nah, I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to go kill these mothers. And so they hold hands and we see them looking off to the distance where they are planning to make their next move to go get Nora at the Lake Hill building. And that is how the episode ends. Solid, a really solid episode. We get the introduction of Isaac and how important he's going to be as a villain to certain folks in this show as we go along. We get an introduction to some key locales that sort of shape the rest of where the show is going. That subway sequence was terrifying and it was really well executed and done like perfectly. And I think the biggest piece of this is that we get that budding in the midst of all this tragedy, in the midst of all this carnage. We get a love piece that is important to show the hope that Ellie could go in as we see her sort of descend into this madness of like, I need to murder everybody. There is a sign of hope, and she could at any point in time say, all right, I'm abandoning all of this. This is what is the most important. Does she choose that? Or does she stick to her path of revenge? And when she has this easy out to just say, this woman loves me, I love her, and now we're starting a family. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And it's going to be that yin and yang to see how far she goes down that path and seeing if she can change the course and not be like Abby. That's what this all sort of becomes about. So this episode sort of shows and puts together a piece for her to say, hey, there's something else out there. Will you take it? Clearly, the way that she's looking at Lake Hill, nah, Nora about to get that business. She's about to get that business. What did you guys think about the 4th episode of Last of Us Season 2 called Day One? Go ahead and get your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere the place podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.